got you out on a Saturday morning?
Well, I think there was a choice between you or doing the laundry.
Good. All righty. Good morning, Cherokee Democrats. How are we doing? Pat said pretty good. Guys, if I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you before, my name is Nate Rich, and I have the honor of serving as the chair of the Cherokee County Democratic Party. And just want to say thank you so much for coming out on a Saturday morning, have coffee with us, and hear from our featured speaker this morning that we're extremely excited about. Typically, I kind of give a little pitch in terms of like what the county party does, and you're going to hear the buzzword of like political infrastructure thrown around so many times. But I'd like to break that down into kind of 4 buckets, and that's educational events, social events, party building activities, and then political activity. And so those 4 buckets are how we make this thing happen. Just a little background on, I guess not background, but what we've got coming up, and a date that I just want to sear in your mind is August 26th. And so all of this political infrastructure that we're building, the reason we're here today is to make sure that we get Democrats elected at the city level, county level, state level, federal level. So the election on the 26th is for Senate District 21 with Deborah Shigley as our champion, and then Commission District 1 for the Cherokee Board of Commissioners. So all the work we've been doing has been gearing up for 2026, and I am foaming at the mouth for the fight next year. And then the universe dropped 2 special elections in our lap this year. Cherokee County hasn't had a Democrat elected since 2012. Jim Hubbard. That's the last time we've had a Democrat elected in the county here. And so we've got an opportunity to flip 2 seats on the 26th. So what I need everyone in this room to do, and I think everyone here has probably signed up on the newsletter, you guys probably follow us on social media, but if you've come to this event or our monthly breakfast social, I need everyone here to take one additional step. We've got 3 weeks until the special election. So that additional step I need you to make is either make calls with us, knock on doors with us, or drop off lit. You would be shocked at the number of people that don't realize that there's a special election on the 26th. That's to our benefit. This is a district that is a 70-30 district, so under normal circumstances, we would not be competing for this seat. And it is the fact that it is low turnout that we've got an opportunity to flip this. So our job, and when we set you guys up with lists to call or doors to knock, these are Democratic doors. These are friendly faces. I'm not sending you to Republican households. It is just mobilizing our base. And so you're going to have a friendly face on the other side or friendly voice on the other side of that phone call. So please, 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 we're going to have all those opportunities up in our newsletter. It's across our social media channels. So if you've never taken that additional step towards like political activism and getting Democrats elected, if there's nothing else you do this month, we need you for 3 weeks. It's a sprint to get across the finish line. So that is kind of the battle plan for 2025 and the lead up to the municipals. But looking ahead to 2026, I want to invite all of you guys here to attend our county committee meeting. It's the second Thursday of every month. That's going to be next Thursday. But we're going to provide an overview of candidate recruitment for 2026. And I'm excited to share that we have met with House caucus staff last week. I meet with Senate caucus staff this week. We've already locked in a candidate for every single race for our state and federal offices next year. I share this story that last year, I came into this role a week before qualifying was done. And so we just kind of had to execute what we had. There was no opportunity to really recruit candidates. And when ballots went out, I always got these calls of, I think my ballot's wrong. I don't have any Democrats to vote for, because we left half of our races uncontested. And so the promise I made coming in was we were going to run a Democrat in every single race. And so we were doing that. So if you come next Thursday, you're going to see an overview. It's just going to be a pretty Excel spreadsheet of everything we've got going on, but we're ready for war. We're one of 13 counties that improved our vote share last year, and we have no demographic trends at our back to support us, but we did it anyway. And that was with half an empty ballot. So in 2026, we've got a full ballot. We've got PACs focused on our candidates, supporting our candidates. We've got a fully built out county party. That's how we're going to flip the House, flip the Senate, and get constitutional officers and get people like Bob Trammell elected to Attorney General of the state of Georgia. So without any further ado, Bob Trammell.
Good morning. One more time. Good morning. All right. I'm Bob Trammell, and I'm running to be your next Attorney General. I want to thank you for having me and the opportunity to share with you. Nate gave me a lot of time to talk. So my daughter this morning asked me what I was doing, and I told her I was coming to speak with you. And she said, well, what are you going to talk about? And I said, well, I'm going to talk a little bit about the campaign for Attorney General, and I'm going to share who I am. And she said, well, that sounds pretty boring, Dad. I don't think I'm going to ride with you. But hopefully you'll find this a little more engaging. I have a couple of things that I want to do. I want to tell you a little bit about myself, and then I want to talk a little bit about what the Attorney General does, and I want to talk about why you should care about who the Attorney General is. I grew up in small towns here in Georgia. I was born in Macon, but I grew up, we lived in the little town of Roberta, if anybody knows where that is, in Crawford County. About 1,000 people there, still about 1,000 people there. And my father's family is from the town of Luthersville. And my parents had bought a home, and we went back every weekend and went to church there in Luthersville, which is where I live now, and also grew up. It's a one stoplight town. There's literally one stoplight, okay? When I was a kid, it was a caution light. I don't even know if people know what a caution light is anymore, but you get a yellow light just to slow down on one way, and then the other way has a red light, but now it's a real traffic light. So we've grown a lot. But I haven't just lived in small town. I went to college at the University of Georgia. Go Dogs! That's right. And I lived in Macon for a few years. At the end of my high school. When we moved, my dad was a college professor at Macon State College. My mom was a school teacher. And so when I went to the University of Georgia, I studied political science and English, and then I went to the University of Virginia School of Law. But I always knew that I wanted to come back to Georgia. And the thing about living in small towns is that it gives you, I think, a certain perspective about community, but more than that, you learn to care about your neighbors. And I think that's the biggest impact, and it's why that when I graduated from law school, I clerked in the United States District Court for 2 years, and then I went to work for a small firm called King & Spalding in Atlanta. But what I found out very quickly when I was working there is, and I worked with a lot of fine lawyers, but it just wasn't what I felt like I was supposed to do with my professional career. And I think the big disconnect for me there was that the matters that I was working on and the cases, at the end of the day, what was really happening was that, the balance sheet, whatever the result was, it was moving some dollars on a balance sheet from one company to a different company. And for me, it lacked, right? Because I wanted to spend my life helping people. That's why I went to law school and became a lawyer. And I just felt like there was more to practicing law than what I was doing there. And so I left my law firm job as an associate, and I moved back home to Luthersville and started the first law firm in the town's history. I remember talking to my grandparents on my mother's side, and I remember telling them that I was leaving my law firm job. And my grandfather was, he was a retired machinist. He worked at Lockheed, and he had a 5th grade education. And my grandmother was a homemaker who had made it almost all the way through high school, but she had my mom when she was 17. So I'm telling them that I'm leaving this job, and they're looking at me like, son, do you know what you're doing? Because they were very proud, and they thought that was, they just couldn't connect to that. But they supported my decision. But I had some friends who also thought I was crazy. They came, and I moved into my grandparents' house on my dad's side in Luthersville, which is an old farmhouse where he and his siblings grew up. And it wasn't ready to plug things like computers and a photocopier in because the wiring was pretty dated. So we were literally going in and having the house rewired, and there was old carpet that we were ripping out. There was some beautiful wood floors, and a buddy of mine came by, and I had a pair of grip. I had a grip, sort of like pliers, to pull carpet staples out. And I was in the floor pulling out carpet staples, and he just looked at me, and he's, well, I can't remember what he said, but I remember what his face said. He said, "Man, you are crazy." But it was the best decision I ever made. The clients that I've represented, it's just been such a fulfilling practice to really help people in times where they're facing the biggest legal issue of their life, whatever it is. Sometimes that means stopping foreclosure of a house. Sometimes that means helping them deal with the death of a loved one in contentious situations or even non-contentious situations. Sometimes that means defending a small business in something where they're facing catastrophic consequences depending on the outcome of the litigation. And so that's my practice. I've done everything that you could possibly do that's examined on the Georgia bar exam at least one time. Some things a lot more than one time. So in 2000, I've been doing that since 2003. In 2014, I was elected to the Georgia House of Representatives. And I served 3 terms in the Georgia House of Representatives. For most of 2 of those terms, for about 4 years, I was the Democratic leader in the House. So I appreciate what Nate said so much about fielding candidates and the importance of flipping those chambers and contesting seats, because for too long, when I was first elected, we had just left too many seats uncontested. And this is sort of an aside, but it's directly relevant to the mission, and I just want to tell you how important it is and support that. What happens when you leave a seat uncontested is that, number one, you don't have the mathematical possibility of a majority when you go to vote in November. That is malpractice, right? You have to have the mathematical prospect of it, because if you don't, guess what? Nothing ever changes. The only way you can change it is if you have the ability to change it at the ballot box. But let me tell you something else that happens, even in districts where people say, well, there's absolutely no shot. The districts get crazier when they're uncontested. Because when somebody does not have to stand up and be accountable in public for what they believe and what they have done, it just slides further and further and further toward an unreasonable, absolutely loon direction. You have to make them stand up and say in public what they believe. And when you do that, by contesting elections, people start to notice. And, you know, it doesn't happen overnight in areas where, you know, there are a lot more Republicans than Democrats, but it happens person by person when they say, you know what, I don't believe that. That's too much. That's too far. And that's how you make progress. Think about where we are as this country right now. We were chatting earlier. I was chatting earlier with some folks, and we were talking about Senator Ossoff's being able to save the CDC recently. And, you know, my thought on that is, what a world where that's even a fight that we have to have, right? So the elections in 2026 and the special elections in 2025, there's never been a more important time for people to stand up and to fight for just reasonable policy, and to speak the truth about how far we've drifted, right? And I'm not telling you anything you don't know. You didn't need me to share that with you this morning, but that is part of what animates my candidacy for Attorney General. And I just want to, I'll come back and share that part with you about my view as a lawyer and about what a dangerous time we are in from a legal perspective, and why the Attorney General's race is one that we all should care about and encourage everyone we know to care about. But, so, you know, I've told you and I've shared with you that I was in the legislature and that I was the Democratic leader in the House. While I was there, you know, we fought for Medicaid expansion. We fought for common sense gun safety laws. We tried to hold the gap as long as we could against some absolutely extreme right-wing things. The most difficult time that I had in the legislature was when Republicans decided to take away reproductive rights of women. And the reality is that I stand here, right here today on this Saturday morning in Woodstock. My daughters, 12 and 10, have fewer rights than they did when they were born. So in 2020, 2020 was my last year of service in the General Assembly. I was on the ballot in 2020. This is the story about why I'm not in the legislature anymore. A national group on the Republican side targeted my race. I was the #1 target for state legislative races for this Republican organization. They wanted me out. They spent $1 million. It was the most expensive legislative race in Georgia history. We were locked down because of COVID in that election. Because we didn't want to risk people's health, and people understandably were reluctant to open doors, and so we weren't able to, you know, move around and canvass and you know, physically touch and contact voters the way we would normally do in an election. And meanwhile, we were getting shelled on TV, digital, in the mailbox. And we pushed back, we fought back, and it was a close election, but we didn't win. I want to tell you a funny story funny and kind of sad at the same time. But one day, my middle child, my daughter Virginia, she came downstairs in the late fall before the election. And you know, kids, if they're on the computer, there's no filter. They're getting these ads, right? They're popping up every time they watch their little shows on YouTube and everything. So she comes downstairs one Saturday morning, and she's just got this look of real concern and consternation on her face. And she comes down and she's standing by my chair, and she said, "Daddy," and she would be at this juncture almost, well, she would have been 6. She would have just turned 6. And she said, "Daddy, why do you want to defund the police?" And I just kind of shook my head, you know, so I knew what was on her. I knew why she was looking concerned. So I was like, "Honey, you know, I don't want to defund the police." And you know, these ads, these things, people say things in campaigns, and they try to, you know, they try to twist things around. But you know, our cousin Josh is a police officer. You know, police are important. They look after us, and she seemed to be reassured. She thought that was okay. So, but she wasn't done yet. Her next question was, "Daddy, why does John Ossoff only like his Hollywood friends?" And I said, "Honey, you know, that's not true either. You know, these are ads, and they're attacking people. You know, I know John. John, that's not true. John just doesn't like his Hollywood friends. He's a nice person. You know, he likes people." And she seemed to accept that. And then she had one more question, and she asked me. She said, "Daddy, are you one of John Ossoff's Hollywood friends?" So, you know, as the kids say, I knew I was cooked at that point, right? When you got to persuade your 6-year-old that you don't want to defund the police and that you're not one of John Ossoff's Hollywood friends, you're probably in bad shape. But let me tell you about this race for Attorney General, and then I would. I'd love to have the chance to hear from you and share, and you know what's on your mind, and answer any questions that you have. Can I ask a favor too? If somebody has a phone, I meant to say this at the beginning. If you make a picture, can you text it to me? So if I don't do that, the person who puts stuff on the social media page will say, "Why didn't you make any pictures?" So. The Attorney General's race, okay. Fundamentally, the Attorney General's job is to protect Georgians. That's it, full stop. How many of you have ever used or know that the Attorney General has done something that's helped you? Attorney General of this state, raise your hand. Okay, a couple people, right? Why didn't everybody's hand go up? Like if the Attorney General's job is literally to protect Georgians, and I'm sitting in a room full of Georgians, right? Nobody here from Alabama or Tennessee this morning or anywhere else. We're all registered voters in Georgia. Why didn't everybody's hand go up? Don't know what they do? Anybody else? I mean, that's true.
We see them being used for political purposes. We see the state Senate trying to stop all the district attorneys.
Political purposes, and maybe they've been looking out for the wrong things, right? What you need is an attorney general who will push back against special interests, corporations that are doing wrong, public officials who aren't doing the right thing, right?
Same reason half the county doesn't know there's an election.
We've got to, this is the challenge for the campaign. There are so many things that the Attorney General could do to make the lives of Georgians better, right? The fundamental mission is to protect them, but we shouldn't be signing on to lawsuit. When President Biden was in office, Attorney General literally signed onto a lawsuit about oil wells in Texas, right? How many oil wells are in Georgia? Right? But the Attorney General is sometimes called the Chief Law Enforcement Officer, sometimes called the top lawyer or top legal officer in Georgia. But who the client is, right? That's our connection to it, right? It's not the title. Who's the client here? We're the client, right? All of us are the client. And that's got to be the mission. You got to be looking out for the client. And if you're off doing things that aren't looking after the client, you're not doing the job. So that's what we're going to do. What are the types of things that we can do? And well, there are so many what I would just broadly categorize as rip-offs. How many of you have ever gotten a text that says that you owe some kind of fine, or if you don't pay this, something's going to happen, right? It's a total scam. Okay, it does sound real. So a couple of things. I've gotten these calls at the law office a few times where there is actually a phone solicitation. It's a phone call. You missed jury duty. I don't know if anybody's ever gotten that one. You've missed jury duty. If you don't go to this kiosk and pay this money, you're going to get arrested. Okay? Well, they don't do that. That's not the way. If you missed first of all, if you missed jury duty, you would have received a letter, and then you would get another letter. You don't get a phone call from somebody that says, but they're very sophisticated scams. I don't want to pretend that it's not sophisticated. They spoof the number, so if you Google the number, it looks like it's coming from the sheriff's office, right? Because I've gotten this call from someone in a panic on the way, and I'm like, don't do that. Do not send money. This is not the way it works, okay? And the same thing with the toll fines. I get this text about every 2 weeks at least. I haven't paid some toll, and or your Amazon, the fake Amazon ones, like you ordered something and here's your bill just to click it. Okay, all those need an aggressive enforcement action to stop it. And with the advent of artificial intelligence getting more and more sophisticated, these scams are going to begin to seem more and more real, because they're going to get to the point very quickly where there's a real voice that sounds like somebody or they're taking information. And so, that is a role that the Attorney General absolutely needs to aggressively enforce. And there needs to be a more user-friendly way to report these scams so that you can get attention on them, so that you can get some feedback. My mom is a frequent target of these. And let's be honest, that's because she's a senior, and seniors are targeted on a lot of these different scams, okay? And some of this is, and I've tried to talk to her about this a few times, and it's just, I don't want to say generational difference, but Part of it is just the technology difference in how the phone was used between generations. My kids would hang up immediately if someone starts to go and try to talk to them and they don't know them, right? They might not even, they probably wouldn't even answer the phone, to be truthful. I mean, they just text the message back. I have to text to get like, hey, come to dinner. So they get that. So, but, you know, when mom gets a call, she answers it. Like, even if she doesn't recognize the number, she picks it up. Okay, not everybody does this, but she does, and a lot of seniors do. And instead of just hanging it up immediately, you know, she will have some back and forth. And, you know, I'll say, Mom, hang the phone up. But she won't, like, immediately conclude it. And what they're doing is they're fishing for personal information, right? They want to confirm, and this is just another part of the scam that goes on, and then it might be the next time. So when I'm Attorney General, there's going to be a zero tolerance for the targeting of seniors on those types of scams. And we're going to aggressively go after that, both civilly and criminally, so that people know, do not mess with Georgia's seniors.
Why isn't there? Why hasn't there been any? What is the benefit to our state to let this go on?
It's a good question, and you know, it's not that there aren't. It's not that there aren't. There's technically a division that this would fall right under. Okay. And I think it's about priority and resource allocation, and it involves some work to put together the case like that. But if they did it, it would have an impact, right? So I can't answer why there hasn't, but the fact that we don't know of an example of, you know, a high-profile case where someone has been prosecuted or you know, fined civilly for that, just tells us that there's not the appropriate attention on it. Because we all, I mean, when I asked this question, practically everybody responded to it, right?
It said that the FAA cannot keep up with the amount of people requesting 800 numbers all the time, and a lot of them come from offshore.
Right.
From the United States.
Let me tell you about offshore is such a great. Let me tell you about another type scam that you know, falls under the scams and ripoffs, and it's sometimes called a romance scam. I don't know if you've ever heard of these, but they're absolutely heartbreaking, you know, when they happen. And we've dealt with at least 2 of them in our office where someone begins. It's the nature of the way we communicate with one another now. You know, there's a lot of electronic communication that's not face to face, so it's not, you know, a person. And these scams are typically targeting, you know, people who have either been on dating sites or, you know, they've lost a spouse, but they're sort of they reach out, and in some cases they start this, and then they're ask them to invest. There's some investment component, or they send money. There are a couple of versions of this, but they show them, and it looks like their return is doing well, so they send more money. And then eventually, predictably, they disappear, and the money is inaccessible, and the money is gone. And a lot of these are offshore in nature, and it's very very difficult, you know, for the victim of the, and there's honestly, candidly, probably an underreporting of it because people are just embarrassed. And there's also an emotional component to it because there was an emotional investment in it. And then, you know, you've lost the money and this relationship that you thought was there. Those are scams that we definitely have to go after as the Attorney General. But let me tell you what the most important piece is from my perspective, and then I'll open it up for questions. We used to take for granted in this country certain things. We used to take for granted that it didn't really matter who held certain offices like Attorney General, because we might not agree with their politics, but we would have the next election, and it wasn't going to mean that the law was not going to be followed. I mean, we might disagree with the priority, we might disagree with what they emphasized or their political perspective, but they were going to execute the job, and they weren't going to ignore the law, or even in some cases break the law. Those times are gone. They're just gone.
What type of laws do they break?
Well, if you look at, so not talking about the state attorney general breaking laws. You know, I don't want to say that that Chris Carr has broken laws, but when you look at what's happening in Washington, how much time do you have to go through the list of how many laws they're breaking, right? They're rolling past, they're just rolling over both laws and norms, and Congress is not exercising oversight authority and holding them accountable. There are a number of lawsuits, you know, where people have filed. Just think about the tariffs, okay? Tariffs is a little, he just makes them up. You know, they're supposed to come from Congress. He does it, and if Congress doesn't push it back, it just happens, right? And too much is like that, where you just make something up and it's going to stick because nobody is going to push back. The danger at the state level is that Democratic attorney generals in states have sued. They're on the forefront of trying to make sure that, like when Congress has allocated money for after-school programs for kids, and then he says, like, we're freezing all that, we're not going to pay it. That's not lawful. That's against the law. And we've got kids who are suffering as a consequence. Democratic attorney generals have sued to try to get that money, you know, unloosed and get it back in to help kids.
Is Chris Carr doing anything about any of that? Is he suing any of these people who claim to be ICE that are stealing people off our streets? Here in the state of Georgia, this is part of America.
So you're touching on, the short answer to the first question is no. When there was a change in president, the Attorney General's office is not participating in any of those suits, you know, against what President Trump has done. And I want to come up. Let me one thing that when I formally announced that I was officially in the race on Wednesday, okay, 2 hours later, one of the Republican candidates for Attorney General sent out on his social media an attack saying that liberal Bob Trammell has entered this race and that he was not going to let Democrat become Attorney General and attack President Trump's conservative policies, da 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 da. Okay. The problem with that is, if you're taking directions from President Trump about how to do your job as the top legal officer, that is a very, very dangerous thing. Okay? So it doesn't matter who you are, if you're breaking the law, the Attorney General's job is to make people accountable to that. And if you're just saying, I'm going to have the phone with the White House's number on it, and if they pick it up and say, if they call and I pick up the phone and they say, don't do this or do this, I'm going to do it, forget it. This is a country that is based on the rule of law. It's not a person. This is not kings, right? You can't just decree stuff. And you can't have people, which just brings us totally into the simplest way to say it. Who's in that chair matters, right? If you got somebody who's willing to say that on social media, that they're going to do whatever the White House wants them to do on that, that's a problem. That's a problem. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to say that I think all the things that you're talking about are very important, of course. But all of those things would be rectified if we had a person in the office who was competent, bipartisan, and willing to work on those issues instead of political issues, like yourself. That being said, so the only way that happens is if we continue to have free and fair elections. So for me, the most important thing is, as in your position, will be to guarantee that. And I think that's what you see changing, not just here in Georgia, but all over the country. The ability to control who votes, how they vote, where they vote, and so you were saying what situation happened. I do remember a case here that happened in Georgia during the prior presidential election, when there was a county here in Georgia, because they were dying to find proof that it was fake. Was it okay? And they let people that had no business have access to voting machines.
They should have prosecuted that case.
And there you go. So when you talk about something that should have been done, that right there to me shows what the problem is. Because all the things could be rectified by voting that guy out and voting you in. But if they control the elections by doing things like that, and you have people now, I think you had said, well, what did the last guy do that was good? He had a line, and it was a minimal line where he said, I'll do this, and this, but I won't do that. And he wouldn't lie and say the election was stolen. And that was a good thing. But we've lowered our standards to the point when you just don't want to tell a bold-faced lie, you're a hero. So these are the things I think we got these grassroots things and that's where we're headed, and I think, we want to protect seniors. But that'll all happen if we have good, decent people and they're doing the job, and it isn't this political machine that's working toward, like you said, serving the master, the orange, Agent Orange that's in Washington. and so anyway,
you're right. I think when I'm saying that there are certain things that we've taken for granted for a long time, right? What you're saying is one of the things that we've taken for granted for a long time, that we would have a clean elections process, and at the end of the day, majority, however that comes out, and then there'll be a next election. Let's give credit for it's a good thing that we didn't have the Attorney General chasing these fraud conspiracy claims as the 2020 election. The danger is, I think of it like a muscle. Okay, so whatever happens as a result of 2026, we'll have a new Attorney General. So Chris Carr, running for governor, open seat, it'll be a new person. The question that I would ask, throw partisan out the window for a second. Just throw that out the window. The question I would ask is, how much time in your professional career have you had to push back against somebody with a lot of authority and a lot of power who's bearing down on you? Okay? Let's ask that question to each of the people who seek the office of Attorney General. Because sometimes, as a lawyer, you have to give difficult advice, and people don't like to hear the advice that you're giving, all right? And I'm not even talking about if the President of the United States is calling and weighing down with the full weight of the federal government on you, okay? And this is what I would submit, and I want to bring back in just for a second. Because there are three people in the race for Attorney General at this point. Obviously, we're all lawyers. We also all happen to have served in the General Assembly, okay? But the two on the Republican side, so there are two Republicans, and I'm the Democrat. The two Republicans have always been in the majority. And when I was in the legislature, obviously, I was the minority leader in the House. Well, I spent my whole time in the legislature pushing back. The whole time. Every day. Hitting a brick wall over and over and over again, because it's a math equation, right? Majority. Half plus one. That's how a law is made. Constitutional majority. Well, when you're in the majority, you begin to believe this illusion like that, oh, you've stood up for this and you've stood up for that. And I'm just going to tell you the reality. I mean, if you're in the majority, you can do whatever you want to do. You don't have to push back. You do what the governor asks you to do, and you get it done. You're never in the position of having to push back. You've spent your entire political, legislative experience never knowing what that's like. Not one time. That's who you want to throw the keys to the car to? I mean, that's a real thing. Somebody, this is a little bit more of a, I don't know, folksy way to say it, I guess. It's like being born on third base and thinking you hit a triple. So let me just wrap my part up by saying I'm grateful. I'm grateful to you for being here on this Saturday, letting me have this chance to share with you. My ask is that you help me communicate to people the importance of this position. Because like you said, people don't know what the Attorney General does, right? But I think you all understand why it's important. Because who's in that chair is going to matter more than ever. Just more than ever. And I think that we've got a real opportunity, but some fights you just have to fight. 2026 is one of those fights, right? And it takes everybody, all of us engaged, pulling together, and we can do this. We can do this. We owe it to ourselves, we owe it to our country, we owe it to future generations. Because they'll look back and say, this is where things turned around. So, thank you. I'm going to just take questions. Is that all right from this point? Yes, sir.
Okay. Flipping back to your original comments about the Attorney General having the phone to the White House, okay? The problem, I think, one of the problems, and we all need to understand it, is that although that's wrong, the people right now on the other side believe that that's okay. They believe that's okay. they're going to vote, they would vote for an attorney general who's running for, saying that if the White House calls, I'll do what the White House says, because they believe what he's doing is right. The only thing that's important is that we understand that's what we're gonna get to. You have to understand that you gotta fight that fight that kind of, not the fact that it's wrong, that it's illegally wrong, it's morally wrong. You gotta fight that back, but you gotta fight back the fact that people are just gonna accept it because the Supreme Court has said he can do anything he wants.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, you're right that there are going to be people that think that's totally fine, okay? But here's what I want to suggest. And it's hard because there's so much of there's so much more of what you sometimes people have called flooding the zone. So there's so much stuff that's happening at the same time. It's kind of hard to know like where to focus on the pushback. But we all have an obligation, all of us, to just speak truth to that particular issue when it's in front of us. Because if we do not, then it does give people permission to keep pushing forward, farther, right? So they may believe that. We might not be able to change their mind, but we have an obligation to say, you know what, that is not right. We have to say it. Can't be afraid to say it, right? Who's afraid to say it? Is anybody afraid to say it? Do it with me. That's not right. That's not right. Right? That's what you got to do. I mean, and that's what we're committed to do, you know, as we go around Georgia and push back, and they're going to say it, right? Like if you want the Trump control of the Attorney General, I'm not the candidate for you. I'm not afraid to say that, right?
And maybe it is part of educating people about what this role is and about the importance of checks and balances so that they actually understand that. So that if there were a Democrat Attorney General and a Democrat President, we as Democrats, hardcore Democrats, would still want someone to, you know, push back on a president who is going the wrong way on something. And again, it's people not knowing
Right.
what your job will be.
And I want to, you know, I just want to be clear about one thing. The role of the Attorney General is not to challenge everything that the president does, Trump does. That's not the job. The job is to protect Georgians. So if we've got Georgia school children who can't get after school funding, you know, we're supposed to protect them. You know, just because Trump decided to freeze it doesn't mean we sit on our hands, right? Yes, ma'am.
I was at the debate in Canton on Wednesday, and the most difficult was to hear all of the Republican candidates basically say that their fealty is to Donald Trump. Whatever, and that's what you're referring to, whatever Donald Trump wants, because what he wants is exactly what I want. There is no discernment about anything he does. They don't talk about any light between what Trump believes and what they believe. And I can't fathom that with such a disgusting, deplorable person as he is, but yet they don't see any difference. Anything he wants is what they want. And all of the Republican candidates, that's what they said.
All five of them
All of them
Yes.
said the same thing.
Yeah.
said the same thing. If Trump wanted it, that's what they want. He's the greatest thing alive. And
Well,
I can't,
you know,
Divine.
I gave up trying to understand Republican primary politics and appeals to Republican primary voters a long time ago because I wasn't any good at it. But let me share one. I want to share some hope with you, okay? Because I get I talk to people, sometimes former colleagues that I served with on the other side, and Republicans sometimes. There are people who previously identified as a Republican, okay, who do not feel that way. They think Trump is an embarrassment, a disgrace. It's a great question. They're not running, but they're out there. They're out there. There are lots of people who are not politically, they don't identify as a Democrat or a Republican, who they do not approve. That coalition is here in Georgia. We have successfully put that coalition together a few times here. We did in 2020 when President Biden was elected, and we elected 2 Democratic United States senators. And the truth is that in 24, when you look relative to other states, Georgia was very close at the presidential level. There were, unfortunately, too many voters who feel the way that I'm describing who just sat out. I mean, they did not engage that process. But I think we're at a high water mark, or we're already past it for support for his policies. But this campaign is an invitation to. That's what campaigns are, right? They're campaigns done well. They're invitations, and this campaign's invitation is going to be for anyone who wants a reasonable person who will follow the law and do the job to protect Georgians, and that's what we got to do. Yes, ma'am.
I'm one of those people that you're speaking to that has been very concerned about what I see happening with our constitutional republic. So that's why I'm throwing my effort behind this, and I promise there is a question in here. First of all, if everyone would please take a look at dictionary.com for the definition of liberal. And when somebody says something to you about being a liberal, you've got questions you can ask them that give these different definitions for the adjective liberal that I think that they would identify with, and then say, hey, you just identified yourself as liberal as well. Okay, you are from Luthersville. I grew up in Southwest Georgia. So I know that you understand the importance of the 2 Georgias. So you're going to have to appeal, even though you know that places like Dougherty County, Terrell County, Mitchell, Baker, all of those are strong Democratic holds. You've got to be able to appeal to the people down there to get out and vote. They're making it more difficult for these people to do that by taking away ramps for them to walk up and rides to the polling booths and things like that. But that's something that, is going to have to be a grassroots effort on your part. Now, my question is, if there is a platform, if I go to somebody and say, hey, I've met Mr. Bob Trammell, I think you should vote for him. Well, why should I vote for him? Please tell me, and also I'd like to know, when does qualifying end?
Great question. So the give us time on building out our, so we're, the beautiful thing about today is you're sort of getting a talk that is from the heart, right? And in terms of the infrastructure, which would include website with platform that you could send, right now the website is sort of very basic, and so that's in formation and in process, but it will be there. Just give us a little time to catch up, and because it's sort of like taking this, and when you become a candidate for office, you superimpose that into your existing life, and you're like on a hamster wheel trying to catch up a little bit. So give us some time on that. The second part of your question, qualifying. So qualifying is in March of next year. So at this juncture, there are announced candidates who have filed the paperwork to raise money to begin the campaign as required by law, but not technically qualified candidates for the week of qualifying. So that week of qualifying will be for all all the offices on the 2026 ballot in November, and that'll be in March sometime. But there's another thing I want to, which was part of what you were saying, that I just want to take a second to talk about, the 2 Georgias and talking to those. And I feel very strongly about this because I feel like I live in I live in one of those parts of Georgia, and I'm going to speak some hard truths about the Democratic Party in those parts of Georgia. When you live in a small town, or the second Georgia, there are not the same opportunities as there are in other parts of Georgia. There are so many people who live in towns like mine who would love nothing more than to live in an area where their kids could come back and make their lives in the communities that they grew up in. And they can't do it. And so, while I think we have done a great job as a party trying to have policies that would help rural Georgia, what we haven't always understood is that when your community feels like it's dying, and we go maybe once every 2 years to those communities and say, we're going to help, we're going to make it better, and then you're gone and your community isn't getting better. Eventually you get the message that you don't care. And this is a tough thing to say. As a lifelong Democrat who's been on the ballot 5 times and will be on the ballot a 6th time. And when you feel like that, and if you think you're in a desert where you're looking for hope, right? Anything that looks like water, you'll run to. And so if candidates come in and they're saying something that connects in some way, it may not change the situation, but it's connecting, right? Somewhere on that spectrum, you're going to go there. Because that's what the mirage of water looks like in that desert. And so that's the challenge. We've got a lot of years of things, a lot of years that we're having to overcome. But I've spent my life showing up for small towns. I live in a small town. I can live anywhere in the United States of America, and I chose to come back home because I believe in small towns. I've lived there for 20 years, raising my kids there. You know, when chances to come to move somewhere else, I have taken a pass on that because I believe in those towns. And that's where it starts. You have to believe in that, and people have to connect to that. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it and act like that's the magic pill. You know, that I go into those communities and I say that, but I will say that if it gets my foot in the door, right? Because I understand what it's like to live in a town where a bank that's been there 100 years closes, which means that all the businesses that have cash from the convenience store to the little restaurant can't go to deposit the cash. And they have to drive 30 minutes one way and 30 minutes back another way just to bank, not to mention other people. Hospitals. A whole nother, in specific to the legal part, we've got legal deserts here where counties don't have a lawyer and they have to go a county over to get a lawyer. Underserved populations where people are relying on, being pro se in courts. These are real challenges, okay? And I can't snap my fingers and make it something that it's not. But what I can do is talk to them about, my love, belief in small towns and experience in a small town. And, the other thing about communicating, the district that I represented, there are not many competitive districts in the Georgia legislature. I mean, it's a handful relative to the other ones. Mine was one of the competitive ones, and the 3 times I was elected, Brian Kemp won my district. Well, let me start with this one. Donald Trump won my district in 2016. I was elected. Brian Kemp won my district in 2018, and I was elected. I was the only Democrat in the Georgia General Assembly that was true. Maybe even in the South, a Democratic legislator representing a Trump district. So I've spent my entire legislative career having to understand how it is to talk to voters who might not vote the same way I do up and down the ballot. And that's important because it is different. I mean, you have to talk, but the thing that I know is basically voters have concern about the same things, healthcare, right? Everybody is going to need healthcare. And we tried to focus and talk about that. So I guess that's a long way to say that that is a challenge that I am going to take squarely on. Because I might not be the only person who could do that, but I do believe that I'm uniquely well positioned to go try to do exactly what you're talking about. Yes, ma'am.
Based on your experience in the legislature and your connections in the legislature, it doesn't look like premium tax credits are going to be renewed, or it's looking very iffy anyway, at the end of this year. What do you think is going to happen with Georgia Access, and what do you think is going to happen with the insurance premiums for people on that program?
What did she say?
Yeah, the question is about the premium tax not being renewed this year and what happens if it's not renewed to on the access side. I wish I had a good answer for you on that, and I don't. When I was in the legislature, Governor Kemp's first term, I tried to meet with. I did have a meeting. I met with him on his legislation, which didn't make sense to me because I forget how they branded it, but it's Georgia Pathways, right? Thank you. Where there's the work requirement and it doesn't go up to 132%, the 100%, and so that was a little different than the premium tax. But I was just trying to communicate with him, like, look, this is a simple policy. All you have to do is add this, and he heard what I had to say, and he was just no, they weren't going to do it. So if he's not seeing the need to do that, it's not going to happen. That's the.
So the premium should move up.
The impact is it's. I'm not an economist, so I don't have numbers on that, but it's not going to be good for premiums is a simple way to say it, right? That's the truest way to say it without, delving into speculation. Yes, sir?
I grew up in a small town. I understand what you're saying. Most of the people that I went to school with, my classmates, Scarlett, there wasn't any opportunity. And my wife could tell you, because she's not from that hometown, it's not what it was when I grew up. It's pretty much gone, right? I understand what you're saying, but the reality is you've got to have this Georgia in order to get in office. You're not going to get in office with that Georgia.
So I don't know if can everybody hear the comment? Okay. Look, you're right in one sense, and I think I would push back a little bit in another sense. The majority of Georgia doesn't live in the second Georgia now, right? For the reasons you're saying. But my whole life, I have disliked this notion about separate Georgias. It's not in my DNA. And I can't sit here and tell you that I can just court one of them and turn my back on the other. They might not vote for me, but I ain't leaving them.
How do you bring them together?
I mean, I wish I could tell you it was as simple as, that there was a simple fix for it. And the only thing I know to do is just keep showing up. Just keep showing up.
But you have to have these other districts to also be convinced that they have to have opposition to the other party to run. If it's one party is still running all by itself, nothing's ever going to change.
You're totally right about that part. If it's just one party over and over again, look, politics is a marketplace, and if you don't have healthy competition, the market fails because you got a monopoly, and then you just get whatever the monopoly party or monopoly candidates are and offer. But this is the other thing I know about going to places where it's hard. And I want to tell you, I want to preface this by saying I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to talk with friends and friendly viewpoints this morning. But it would be a mistake if I did not go and talk in rooms that did not share my point of view. Because that is when, that's when you have the opportunity to move, help move the needle some. And the other thing is, it's this thing about political courage. There are parts, in these towns we're talking about, there are people who share our perspective or don't like the prevailing political viewpoint of where they live. But they're not going to say anything because there are consequences to saying it, right?
But there has to be somebody in that district that is willing to stand up and say, we need someone to run against this Republican.
But if their statewide candidate can't go in and say that, right, it just gives a little bit more, encouragement for that to happen. It's not a magic fix. I'm not trying to convince you of that. But I am, as somebody who, has felt that. I used to, before I ran for office, I would see some people and they would be one way. And then after I ran for office and they were like, oh my God, he's a Democrat. All of a sudden they were another way, right? Most people aren't like that, but there are some. But if the communities that we're talking about, if they don't see other people going in, maybe they summon the courage to do it, but it is it's so much easier for us to say they should do that than to actually, for them and their experience, to do it. Because it's their family, it's their kids, it's their business, it's the people they go to church with. They all start to say, you know, and that's hard.
We're not fighting, oh, I'm sorry.
Good.
I was going to say, you know, we're not fighting Trump, we're fighting a movement, the MAGA movement. The MAGA movement, the MAGA movement has become larger than Trump.
Right. That's true. Yes, ma'am.
So if the president had, and I don't even know if I'm asking the right question, he's been given a lot of immunity to break the law, but he needs people to implement that and help him with that. Do those people automatically follow under him, that they are not, they will not face consequences?
No.
Or do, you know, and where does the Attorney General come in with that? Like, to
Yes.
make sure that people are following, you know,
It's
consequences?
no, that's a great question. So if there's some the attorney, let me just tackle it first from the Attorney General's perspective. And this is a little bit different than what you're asking, but indulge me for a moment and then I'll loop back. The pardons that he is talking about giving for the federal crimes or people who have been convicted at the federal level, you know, are troubling because he's essentially rewarding sort of partisan loyalty, which is a new thing, okay? And that gives license to a law breaking, where you can break the law and you know that on the other side there's a pardon for you, right? And that's a real problem. Where attorney generals can come in is that his pardon power does not extend to state law. So if you're simultaneously breaking a federal law and a state law and you have a state prosecution of that, that is outside the reach of that pardon power. Now, that won't be perfect. It won't be every situation. But, you know, if someone's breaking Georgia law and breaking federal law, I mean, we can take care of the Georgia law part, you know, as Attorney General. So,
What about, say, people that are like ICE agents who are taking people off the street, or, you know, are they immune from getting prosecuted from taking people?
yeah, so on the, I mean, you have to, the short answer is anything has to, the Attorney General's sort of portfolio of responsibility is state law. Okay, so if they're doing something that runs afoul of state law, there is potentially a remedy that the Attorney General can pursue. If it's breaking federal law, then you know, that's going to be outside of the reach of the Attorney General's office. But the pardon issue is one that, you know, again, this politicization of it is really very, very worrisome. But there's also an aspect of this that this hasn't happened, and I'm not forecasting this to happen, but I want to just talk about it for 1 second. You know, there's been in the news you may have read about a Ponzi scheme that these Republican activists who were involved in the Republican Party, they owned a little building and loan, and it's right up the road from where I live in Noonan. And they sort of, their constituency for soliciting investment in this is a lot of far-right, Republican, Christian conservative, so people they went to church with and people they did politics with, okay, who trusted them. And the size of the Ponzi scheme was about $140 million. And about 300 and 400 people lost substantial amounts of money. In some cases, their retirement savings. And you know, some of these pitches, when you read about, they went on right-leaning shows. I don't know what the shows on Newsmax are, but Newsmax and Eric Erickson's show, and they ran these advertisements, and the pitch was, if you want to invest in the patriot economy, whatever the patriot economy is, right? You send us this, and but the people who invested are victims. And when I say protect all Georgians, I mean protect all Georgians, right? Not based on who they support at the ballot box. So to circle back to this pardon question, right, and the question of the politicization of pardons, you know, a Ponzi scheme is simultaneously a violation of federal and state law. So, and maybe the situation is too radioactive to contemplate a pardon, but when this story broke, someone texted me, "Do you think they get a pardon?" And I thought, oh my gosh, I hadn't even thought about that, right? But if that's where we are, you know, that kind of thing apparently matters now. And the other thing about, the other thing aside from the politics part about those pardons is that there's just this feeling, okay, that I get that a lot of it depends on what your net worth is. So if you have a certain amount of money, probably more likely to get a pardon than, you know, than others. And that's, you know, that's just wrong, right?
Well, I've got one question for you, and then I want to make sure that we've got a second guest speaker here that I want to bring up and introduce. There's a point and then two questions. The point is the feedback that I get from folks so often right now is a frustration with democratic politics and how we don't seem to have fight in us, how we aren't being creative enough, and that we're just shrugging our shoulders saying, well, there's nothing we can do. And this like bleeds into the legal conversation and the legal defense of our rights and civil liberties. And so my question to you is how, we've seen this happen at the federal level, and we're seeing it happen at the state level as well, where we're seeing things like Chevron deference and like these stalwart functions and standards for legal defense torn apart because we've used the same legal defenses for 60 years, and Republicans have learned what those legal defenses are to the point where they will now do something and find something abstract to use as justification to tear apart longstanding legal precedent in this country. My question in response to that is, why aren't we doing the same? Why aren't we getting creative? And should we be fortunate enough to get you elected in 2026, we just need to run out the clock for 2 years and just throw spade at the wall to slow this federal government down at every turn that we can. And so it doesn't need to necessarily, my perspective is that it doesn't necessarily need to be on the strongest legal footing so long as we can slow the machine down long enough to fight back. The second question here that I have for you is a conversation on bandwidth. And so you mentioned with these spam texts. It's not that these aren't important fights, but how do we have the bandwidth? Your office had the bandwidth to tackle all of them. We've got really powerful interests in the state, like the GTLA, Georgia Trials Lawyer Association, and other legal groups. The legal community in Georgia is really tight-knit. Every lawyer in the state is required to do pro bono work. So why can't you, as the Attorney General of the state, host a roundtable and build this large legal strike force? So whether it's eminent domain or environmental concerns or clawing back appropriated funds from Congress that the Trump administration's withholding, but have a massive small army of legal professionals that are dedicated to upholding and fighting back against fascism. Because we've got Jeff Duncans of the world, to your point. We've got Republican lawyers that are just as frustrated. We need an amplifying effect, and we've got to be creative about it. So, like, how do we address that?
So let me take the second part, and then come back to the first part. So part of the work of this campaign is to get the buy-in of lawyers in the state of Georgia. And so what you're suggesting perhaps is an outgrowth of that. I think the first part is to, and there are a lot of lawyers out there that understand this, the consequences. And when I was sort of even before I was contemplating and thinking through the possibility of a campaign, and I had conversations with a number of lawyers that I was close to where we were all feeling and articulating the same kind of thing. So I think that's out there. We've got to work to make sure that we bring those lawyers together, because this isn't campaigns aren't a one-person thing, right? This is a movement that we've got to make sure we're capturing in order to be successful and to, when we win office, to produce the results. So that I know that's not a blueprint, but that's the work ahead, right? The second part, which was the first part of your question, I honestly don't believe that we have to take far-fetched cases in order to be effective in doing the pushback. The problem, from my perspective, has been the absence of any pushback at all on the legal, right? So there are good cases that attorney generals in other states are bringing that we can do the same kind of thing to do it. I mean, we don't want to dilute our currency, just to stall. We want to win. We want to go to court and we want to win. The larger issue that you're talking about is, about the legal defenses and, you couldn't have paid me to believe that the Supreme Court would ever rule and overturn Roe versus Wade. The day that happened, I fundamentally questioned the things that I knew as a lawyer and took for granted for a long time. The basis of stare decisis, it just sort of shook. I wouldn't have believed it. Now, would I have believed that they continued to chip away at it? Sure. Yeah, I would believe that. But I would never have believed that they just threw it out. So all of that is a function of a decades-long plan and financing about a takeover of the court that we're living in the reality of. So the federal judiciary, I mean, they planned and they're reaping the results of that plan for years. So it doesn't happen overnight. The answer is that, and this is challenging because people get frustrated or they don't see it, they don't see the fight that you're saying. This is still a democratic republic. And the way that you affect change is you have to win at the ballot box. And so we have to take Congress, we have to take state legislatures, and that's the only way we begin to change it. I mean, there's no, I think for a long time, what we relied on was the federal courts to protect us. And we just hung our hat on it. And then when it was gone, we're like, oh my gosh, what do we do? And we can't do that anymore, and we all know it. So we just have to roll up our sleeves and, take it back, one seat at a time. And I want to say something about the fight part. I feel that frustration. When you have a Congress that is, seemingly getting rolled over, it just feels like there's no fight, right? But the reality is that if we don't show up in 26 to win a majority in Congress, it's going to feel a lot worse. It's going to get a lot worse. So, I mean, we have to own the fight, you know. And if we have that fight, then our elected officials are going to be required to take that fight, you know, forward. So it has to start with us. I mean, it's easy to point in the chair and say, you know, they need more fight, but we need more fight, right?
Yep. Do you mind if I get our next guest? Introduce real quick.
He's making.
We had lots of questions, and a quick round of applause for Bob for being here this morning. If it is not abundantly clear, we've got someone really, really qualified, really, really passionate about both Georgias, and that's the secret sauce. When you lose 144 counties, you got to fight for all of them, both Georgias. Next up, we've got Ms. Stephanie Newell, and we are so fortunate. Stephanie is the new secretary for the Democratic Party of Georgia. So we've got this new leadership team in there that Stephanie's going to be a really important part of, kind of shepherding this party as we gear up for the midterms and we get through these special elections. So I want to bring Stephanie up so she can introduce herself to you all and answer a few questions.
Well, hello, and first of all, Gig'em, I went to Texas A&M, so I have to say that to you all. Ma'am? Well, also, I'm soft-spoken, so because I am from Noonan, which is one county away from Luthersville. Actually, I got my start in politics working for Bob. He was my first campaign, and graduated from law school, worked for Bob's firm, and then Bob says he's going to run for office. And I was like, oh, yay. Yay, that sounds like a great idea. And then he said, you want to run the campaign? And I was like, but we went ahead and did it, and Bob won. And I don't think anybody planned on Bob winning. And what that did was that sent me from law back into politics that I had been a part of when I was at Wesleyan College as a young Democrat. So I was a president at Wesleyan College, and my friend Crystal Rogers Shine, from originally from Morrow, but now she lives in your neighborhood. She is here today because I told her I was going to be here. So you've got a new member, one of my Wesleyan sisters. But I ran because I knew that our party has some fractures, right? And okay, let me explain this to you. I have a history degree from Wesleyan, a JD from Florida Coastal, which is no longer there, but I have my JD, and it's an ABA accredited JD. And now I have my LLM, which is a Lagoon Magister. It is a specialization law degree, and that law degree is from Texas A&M, and it is specifically in risk management, which makes me uniquely qualified to be your secretary. Because according to the bylaws, my responsibility is to certify Charlie the chair's signature, to certify elections, and to make sure that I've attested to the fact that we have a quorum. But these are things that are kind of in the risk realm right now. And I believe that I'm ready to do this for you. I also spend a lot of time working in AI governance and AI ethics. I have a AI ethics certificate from the London School of Economics, so I'm certified in AI ethics. That's our future. It's how we get from point A to point B, because as you were talking about with bandwidth, AI allows us to scale. Right? So when I say scale, I mean, you know, you have 10 people you have 10 employees or 10 people that are working on something. You can use AI to do the work, to take that 10 people's work and make it look like 1,000 people are working for you. And so when I look at AI, I see all of these opportunities, particularly in Democratic politics. And I'm gonna give you all my number. It's for, I'll say it right now, but also I'm going to give it to Seth so he can get it to everybody. My number, this is my actual personal phone number. It's 404. If you see something or you have a question about something that is going on at the state level, you are more than welcome to call me. I am a campaign manager by trade, and I sleep with my phone in my hand. I have been doing this my entire life. 404. And again, I'm from Noonan, so I heard Bob speak so eloquently about the two Georgias. And I have experienced the two Georgias because I lived in Noonan, which is 35 minutes from downtown Atlanta, but I also had a pet bull when I was a child. I mean, he just moved in our yard, and my dad was like, do you understand that thing is gonna get bigger? Because he's a calf. And 2,000 pounds later, and he comes running over the hill, and every time somebody sees him in our yard, they go running away. I mean, best guard dog you'll ever have, a bull. But I came from that, and also I was 35 minutes from Atlanta. So I understand the difference between the Georgia that you grew up in, because I grew up in a closed shop town too. Noonan is very much a closed shop. That's why everything that is New Noonan, which is Sonoy, people call it Sonoya, but it's Sonoy. It's out there on the eastern side of the county. Those people are sent to Fayette County when they need to do anything. They don't come to Noonan, they go to Fayette County. And that was a plan that was put in place in the 80s, because I remember the county commissioner coming to my grandmother's house and explaining to her what they were doing, because my grandmother owned a lot of property in Coweta County. So I understand the two Georgias very well. And I would just like to add, before I open up to questions that you may have, Bob has been straddling that fence the entire time I've known him. And honestly, I can't think of a more qualified person to be our Attorney General. When I worked for Bob, he never gave me an answer. He would always say, well, keep looking, that's not really it. And yeah, you just want to keep looking, because I'm eager beaver. I'm like, well, what about this? He never gave me an answer. He made me think. He taught me how to think in a legal mindset. And that is the ultimate thing that anybody can say about an attorney. This attorney taught you how to think like a lawyer. So, do you have any questions about me and what I do? Yes, sir.
The question is to both of you, and Bob alluded to it. The Republicans have done a better job in the state of Georgia of getting to the little people, the little towns, wherever. What, and from your perspective, have they done right that we've done wrong up to now?
What we've done wrong is, I think, a consequence of the way the party is structured. What we've done wrong is we've not been able to reach those people in places like where I live, like the people with the bulls just hanging out in their yard and can visit their neighbors and have snacks of hay. Those people we don't reach those people as often as we should. They reach me because I'm African American. But on paper, if you look at everything about me says I'm likely white and likely a Republican. Where I'm from, the schools I have gone to, the things I have done, they say I'm likely a white Republican. So, I mean, for a minute there, I stopped getting calls from Democrats because they thought I was a white Republican. Yeah.
The follow-up question is, you now understand what you have to do. Are we going to do that going forward?
Oh, absolutely. I have been talking to people all over the state. Like, you'd be surprised how much my phone has been blowing up. But in District 2, which they brought up Terrell County, Dougherty County. Okay, so that is Georgia 2. That is Sanford Bishop's district. Right now, Terrell County, which is super Democratic, does not have a county party. I'm working with Will Davis right now on getting that up and running. This is outside of what the secretary is supposed to be doing, and Charlie has told me many a time, Stephanie, you can say no, But I can't say no because I think right now we are in an existential crisis, right? That's why I ran. I am not a person that stands up in front of people and talks. Bob will tell you this, I'm just quiet in the back. I don't say anything. Most people don't even know I have come and gone from events because I dress in black and I say nothing. I used to have the advent of my, my mother, who was a high school drama teacher. So if that tells you anything about how easy it was for me to hide, because I had my mama. Like, I would just say, here, mama, go out into the room. And people would just go talk because she just had that aura about her. I didn't have to say a word. But now we're in an existential crisis. And I found that I feel a responsibility. I feel a deep responsibility, not only to the way down yonder on the Chattahoochee where I live, but also to the people of this state who have given me so many opportunities, down to the IBEW, because my dad worked for Georgia Power, and I remember going to IBEW meetings when I was a kid. As a matter of fact, the first Young Democrats meeting I went to at Wesleyan, I got the days wrong, so I thought I was gonna have a weekend to go home first. I found out it was the next day, so I hop in my Toyota Tacoma that my dad bought me so I'd be able to pick up hay from my bull. And I drive from Wesleyan all the way back to Noonan, and I got there around 3 o'clock in the morning. My mom never wakes up because, you know, she's Carol. She was beauty sleeping. But my dad opens his eyes, and I'm standing there in the door, and he's like, I thought we discussed staying at school until weekends. And I said, I need your union button because I'm going to my first Democratic Party meeting. I need your union button. It's tomorrow, Daddy. I gotta find it. He was like, I haven't seen that button in 10 years. I was like, it's in the back of your it's the back left of your top drawer in your armoire. Because that was the last place I saw him put it. And I have a photographic memory, meaning that I see things in pictures. So it's not a perfect memory, but I see pictures. Like right now, about 2 weeks from now, I would still be able to tell you who was sitting where they're sitting, just because it's a picture. Like, I might not be able to give you all their names, but that's how it goes. But I got that button, and I went back and I went to my first meeting, and I was sitting there with my Union Yes button on when it was time to be a Democrat, a big girl Democrat for the first time. But all right, if you have any more questions, and I hope I answered your question, Terrell County is on my list. There are multiple counties right now that Sarah Todd is also working on that don't have parties. They don't have parties. They don't have committees at all. Now, we have 159 counties in this behemoth of a state. And, you know, when they say there's 2 Georgias, it's really 3. You've got the mountains, you've got Atlanta, and you've got South Georgia. And South Georgia's capital is actually Jacksonville, Florida. So, yeah, there are several things going on here. And I learned the state. I've been to every single county in the state, but I learned it by my dad's love of power plants. So when we were going on vacation or we go anywhere, I learned the state by going to power plants, and I would be able to talk to people about, oh, you're from this place, so, oh, well, your power grid is fueled by plant Scherer in Juliet. Yeah, Dad, and they offloaded Arkwright's work to plant Scherer. And of course, they look at me like I was crazy. But I mean, that's how I learned the state. When I had to fill it out in the 8th grade, the Georgia map, I filled it out with the power plants first and then put the states around it because that's what I was taught to do. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me now or call me because like I said, I will answer the phone. I got a question from Congressional District 1 and it's 6:34 this morning. He was answered by 6:47. So yeah, there's no such thing as a late paper at Texas A&M, so I've been living that life and now I'm just stuck in it. But if I can be of any help to you, or if you have something that you want brought up maybe at the executive committee level, contact me. I'll bring it up. What do I have to lose? Like, thank you.
Thank you. Alrighty, guys. It is pushing 12:30, so we're gonna get you all out of here. If, we've got some coffee in the back if you need a refill for the road trip home. But if not, that call to action for everyone is knock on some doors or hand off some lit or make some phone calls for us. It's go time. 3 weeks. War. Brace for impact. Let's go. Thank you.